Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News for this Thursday. It is the fourth day of September 2025. And like earlier, we have some more very huge headlines to bring to you. Today's a very busy day with respect to last day's Bible prophecy and headlines in the news, as you will soon see. All right, three headlines we're going to look at. First one from Newsmax. Bibi's opportunity to expand Christian support for Israel is now an excellent story from Newsmax. And then two that are really fascinating here. Israel HaYom, Turkey and Libya's imaginary border targets Israel and Egypt. Turkey and Libya, where does that sound familiar? Yeah, Ezekiel 38. And speaking of Ezekiel 38, with traditional proxies sidelined, Iran sets its sights on Sudan. Jewish News Syndicate. Iran and Sudan, where does they come into play? Yeah, also Ezekiel 38. You really can't make this stuff up. So here we go. Headline number one, Bibi's opportunity to expand Christian support for Israel is now. Again, story from Newsmax. Cindy Grosz talks with Tom Basile, who speaks about issues that unite, don't ignite, and with common sense, but urges Bibi to connect more with Christian Zionists. And here was the interview. He is the host of America Right Now on Newsmax TV, and his articles have appeared in many publications, including Forbes, Fox News, and the Washington Times. I guess you pronounce it Basile of Basile. Not sure how you pronounce that. Is the author of the 2017 book Tough Sell, Fighting the Media War in Iraq. The article goes on to say we discuss politics, Trump, the latest headlines, and of course, Israel, American Jewish issues, and worldwide anti-Semitism. Now, here's where it's really interesting. Prime Minister Netanyahu has done more to protect more Muslims and save more Muslim lives than any other leader in the Middle East. This by standing up to the extremists and Iran. He's not just saving Israel, he's saving Judaism. He also has a unique opportunity to make it clear to the American Christian community that Israel will protect the Christian presence in Israel and the greater Middle East as well. So I then asked him, well, how do you explain the growth of anti-Semitism on the extreme right, including many social media platforms that claim to report the truth and the America First agenda? Excellent question here. Now, I love his answer. Basile was adamant about the so-called conservatives. He said they're no better than the extreme left. Anyone who attacks Israel doesn't understand what is really going on, is not really MAGA or a Trump supporter. Now, this is so true. This is what I found out growing up. I was raised in Orange County, California, very conservative political. It's not anymore, but it was at that time, God and country place. A lot of people, almost everyone was a conservative there. Not very many Christians, but conservative. But there were so many anti-Semites that hated the Jews, hated Israel, and sadly, we see this today in the Republican Party. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, others are big, Pat Buchanan, many anti-Semites that are there that are conservative in their politics, but certainly aren't supportive of Israel. So, like he said, he was adamant the so-called conservatives are no better than the extreme left, and that's exactly correct. He said, this should be a moment when we bring Christians and Jews together to defend the history and the relevance of values that are under attack, not only in Israel, but here as well, here in America. Jews are under attack by a coalition of the far left and Islamic extremists in an attempt to eviscerate the biblical history that is under the underpinning of Western civilization. Basile added, Prime Minister Netanyahu and his team must do more to connect with American Christian Zionists, stress their government successes, and express solidarity. Americans guided by Judeo-Christian values. This could not be more true. Christian Zionists, we've talked about this before as a general term that basically explains what we do here on our website, Educating Our World, and on Breaking News. What does it mean? Well, we believe, though the nation of Israel is presently in unbelief of Jesus as the Messiah, that God still has a plan for Israel in the future. That's why we support Israel. We've laid it out in a number of our books, including 25 Signs We're Near the End, and Look Up, a timeline of 50 last days events. These books, of course, are free downloads on our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy. So please take advantage of them. Simply put, our support for Israel is based on what the Bible teaches will happen in the future. Namely, the nation will eventually turn to Jesus as the Messiah, but not before they go through the worst period that they've ever experienced. Now, the next story is showing movement that we eventually expect to see that will help form the Russian-led coalition of nations in Ezekiel 38:39 that invades Israel in the last days. In fact, these next two stories are fascinating. Here we have Turkey and Libya in the same headline. Some Israel HaYom. Turkey and Libya's imaginary border targets Israel and Egypt. Erdogan is mapping out continuous control from the Mediterranean to Bab al-Mandab, aiming to dominate shipping routes and regional strategy. Egypt stands with Israel against the same threat. Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan announced a trade cutoff with Israel. We mentioned this the other day, shutting ports and restricting airspace, the latest move in a strategy rooted in President Erdogan's 2019 maritime deal with Tripoli, which granted Ankara a direct line 1,000 kilometers across Egyptian and Greek waters. The agreement filed with the UN drew immediate rejection as a fictitious border concocted for military aid. About 98% of Israel's trade depends on the Mediterranean routes, with seabed cables linking it to Europe and beyond. Desperate for Turkish weapons, Tripoli, of course, that's Libya, handed him a gift, a tool to threaten Israel's sea lanes. Libya is fractured. We have talked about this. The Tripoli government, dependent on Erdogan's military aid and aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood, Qatar, and global jihad networks. This is the western part of the country. Okay, now opposing it in the eastern part of the country, the camp of a man named General Haftar. He's the lead of that. The eastern side is supported by Russia and by Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Egypt, whose security interests often converge with Israel's. Haftar rejected the 2019 deal as illegitimate surrender of Libya's sovereignty and invented border conceded to Ankara for military aid. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. Today, the East is shifting. Okay, after Haftar met Turkey's intelligence chief, the Tobruk House of Representatives, once opposed, is now preparing to approve. What began as a one-sided deal with Tripoli is now a lever spanning in both camps. This border, which has collapsed legally and defies geographic logic, is not just a fictitious map. It's a strategic instrument aimed at erasing Greece, squeezing Egypt, and blocking Israel. Through it, Turkey seeks to control the critical infrastructure on which Israel and the region's security and economy rely. Libya continues to be in the midst of a civil war. However, eventually it will be able to field an army that will join Iran and Turkey in their invasion of Israel. Now, this is us talking now, not the article. They will eventually be able to field an army that will join Iran and Turkey in their invasion of Israel. This story could indicate the start of such a movement. So isn't it interesting? We see Libya now working with Turkey here, and they have been doing it. The the western part of Libya, which again was the eastern part. The eastern part is shifting after Haftar met Turkey's intelligence chief, and now you've got both sides of the country, it seems, starting to work together. Because again, one of the things we've said that keeps Ezekiel 38:39 from happening, Libya has to be united as a country to be able to field an army, because they are called Put in biblical terms, and Put is one of the nations that joins Russia, Iran, and Turkey in the last days. Now, speaking of that, another nation that will be involved in the coalition is called Cush in the Bible. This is modern day Sudan. And our next story illustrates how these various nations are in the process of coming together. You really can't make this stuff up, can you? Here's headline number 3 from the Jewish News Syndicate. With traditional proxies sidelined, Iran sets its sights on Sudan. The recent rapprochement between Iran and Khartoum, military leader General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the de facto head of the state, follows an 8-year diplomatic rupture. In other words, after 8 years of rupture, it looks like they're coming together. Khartoum, of course, is the capital there of Sudan. In the Muslim Middle East, plotting revenge is a way of life. So it's not surprising that Iran is seeking to avenge the humiliating defeat inflicted by the United States and Israel in June. While Israel is the main focus of Iran's revenge, the United States, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates are also targets for the Ayatollahs of Iran. With Hezbollah demobilized and the now defunct Syrian President Bashar Assad's territory no longer available to transport arms to the terror group, The entire Shiite crescent has been disrupted and is close to elimination. Only the Houthis currently function as a viable proxy, although some Iraqi Shiite militias loyal to the Ayatollahs might target American and Israeli interests as well. Now, the article goes on to say the Iranians are expert at finding new clients for arms, especially when they can bribe warring factions, as in the case of Sudan. Sudan's territory stretches along the Red Sea. Its port might provide Iran with a way to disrupt Israel's navy along the Red Sea, thereby endangering the Jewish state's ability to trade with Asia and Africa. Should that happen, the Red Sea would be locked on both sides, with the Houthis controlling the southeastern shore of the waterway. Iran has significantly increased its military and economic involvement in Sudan's ongoing civil war, leading many experts to warn that it might well be Iran's next proxy. The recent rapprochement between Iran and Khartoum's military leader, like we said, follows an 8-year diplomatic rupture, and it's designed to, again, advance their goals. Ironically, under al-Baram, Sudan was poised to join. This is interesting because we talk about this and we said this is kind of strange because it doesn't fit last day's Bible prophecy. Sudan was actually poised in 2020 to join the Abraham Accords that President Donald Trump initiated during his first term in office. Sudan actually signed the Abraham Accords Declaration in January 2021, which normalized relations with Israel. Here comes the but a full bilateral agreement was delayed by political instability and remains unratified. While Sudan signed the declaration, the unfolding of that country's civil war, which began in 2023, stalled further progress. And here's where it gets really interesting. In February 2023, Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen met with al-Baram and finalized the text for a formal peace agreement. The signing was contingent on the formation of a civilian government in Sudan. As part of it, the United States removed Sudan from its list of state sponsors of terrorism, which had blocked Sudan's access to international loans and financial aid. The United States also loaned the country $1.2 billion. The Islamic Republic, however, has been exploiting Sudan's ongoing civil war and instability to expand its influence, raising fears that Tehran could turn the Sudanese armed forces into a proxy force. Since the late 2023, Iran has been supplying this army with military equipment, notably drones, strengthening its position in the conflict along with the rapid support forces led by this particular general, which the UAE also supports. Okay, here's now the key, this last paragraph. Iran's military support for the Sudanese armed forces is part of its broader campaign to reestablish a foothold on the Red Sea. Tehran has long coveted Sudan's access, coveted access to Sudan's 530-mile coastline. Israel is clearly concerned about any attempt by Tehran to make Sudan its new proxy. Iran's influence is to destabilize Sudan and would enable Iran to transfer weapons to Hamas and undermine regional stability. The potential for a new proxy of terror in Africa is seen as a dangerous escalation of Iran's strategy to encircle and challenge Israel. Israel had previously conducted airstrikes in Sudan in 2009 and 2012 to prevent the transfer of Iranian weapons to Hamas. So get this, Turkey, Libya, Iran, Sudan have been the headlines in the last two stories, all part of the last days coalition of Ezekiel 38 led by Russia. Each nation is mentioned by their ancient name, and the modern nation of Turkey, the modern nation of Libya, the modern nation of Iran, the modern nation of Sudan will be part of this last days coalition. And we have Turkey and Libya lining up, and Iran looks like they're going to line up with Sudan. Interesting, isn't it? You really can't make this stuff up, can you? I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. Like we said, a wild day here. We'll be with you tomorrow for more. Until then, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.